Welcome back to the Geek Fix podcast, exclusive to Patreon with my good friend Aaron Sparrow. We got some interesting things to talk about today. How you doing, Sparrow?
Doing all right. I'm a little tired, a little worn out. Went late with the Pop by Culture stream last night with Josh and Drew, and then I was actually broadcasting from Max's place. So Max came back from class, and we hung out and talked for a while. And then I jumped on the freeway to come home, and in California's delightful wisdom, they just decided to close the freeway for no reason. No work being done. Just something they've been doing lately, closing down freeways, inconvenience everybody. It's great. Love
Very nice. So cut down on the consumption of fuel, but you're certainly having a better.
Idle on the freeway. Yeah, it's a good plan.
But you're certainly doing better than Bob Iger and a lot of people of Disney. It turns out that Nelson Peltz guy that was doing a proxy battle at the end of 2022, I think into the beginning of 2023. He's back and he owns even more of the company. And Bob Iger's Incompetence have kind of opened themselves up to an enormous battle to where they might not be able to stop it this time.
I hope they can't. I would really love to see what Nelson Peltz can do. I mean, it's become obvious that Disney needs new leadership. Disney needs a new direction. Disney needs to clean house. They just have a string of successive failures that have been going on. And it's sad to see, Walt's company come to this. So I think that they do need a huge overhaul. I don't know enough about Nelson Peltz to know if he's the guy to do it, but I know that something needs to happen.
These are the details that we do have. Activist investor Nelson Peltz, who dropped a long battle with Disney earlier this year, has amassed a large stake in media giant and said to be seeking board seats. Peltz Trian Fund, one of Disney's largest investors with a stake valued at upwards of $2.5 billion, is expected to request multiple seats on the board of directors, including one for himself, according to the Wall Street Journal, citing people familiar with the matter. And that's actually pretty crazy because the last time they had $1 billion with the Disney stock, which is certainly worth a lot less than that now because the stock value has been declining. And over the months, he's actually amassed $2.5 billion. It kind of feels like he's not screwing around and he wants some real change. And I don't know if this is a direct confrontation towards Bob Iger and his ultimate position, but it sounds like he's not going to take no for an answer this time.
Yeah, and it seems like he's got the muscle to make it happen at this point. It's really interesting, to see this happen. I mean, so he started his proxy fight. They acquiesced on a bunch of things. They fed him a bunch of, like, here's a bunch of, like red meat that you want. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to back off. He just let Bob Iger continue to run down the stock and just kept gobbling it up at cheaper and cheaper prices. And now has come back with, with a huge stake. And I don't think they can fight him off this time.
I don't think it's happenstance or coincidence that all of a sudden this stuff's coming up and all of a sudden Marvel Studios realize we don't make television correctly. Maybe we need showrunners. Maybe we need actual scripts. Maybe we need to do pilots and make sure that people are interested in the programming so they don't just flee Disney Plus. Maybe we need to start taking Star Wars a little bit more seriously and, just looking at everything in a different light to where they just can't F around forever. They're actually going to have to do something that's entertaining to bring people back into the Disney brand.
Yeah, it's really, this is just got like, there's going to be movies about this eventually, I think, because
like The Big Short or whatever.
Yeah, there's just such a Game of Thrones kind of vibe to this. The fact that Bob Iger stepped away and Bob Chapek became CEO. But Bob Iger never left his office, never left Disney, never left his beloved shower in his office, just kept staying there and was undermining Chapek at every turn because he didn't really want to step away. He wanted that, he wanted that back. And, now you look at it and you just see like the absolute hubris and even guys at this level will get in their own way. When Bob Iger stepped away, at that point, he probably would have been hailed as the best CEO Disney ever had. That would have been his legacy. But his ego couldn't let go, and he had to come back. He had to force Chapek out and come back in like to a hero's welcome, like he was going to save the company. But then it became evident he has no plan to save the company. He doesn't know how to fix the things that he's broken. He did great while Disney was so flush with cash that he could buy whatever toys he wanted and let those toys kind of like run out the momentum that they had. But once they ran out the momentum that they already had coming into Disney, Disney had no way to keep that going. He had no creative people in line to keep that momentum. And so everything started to collapse. And when he came back, now you're stuck with all of the problems that you created and you apparently have no solution.
Continuing, Peltz had originally criticized Disney for profligate spending including the deal for Fox's entertainment assets, called on it to buy the remainder of Hulu from Comcast or dump the entire business, said it should increase capital expenditures as a park business, which it has since announced plans to do so, and attacked it for its failed succession plan after former CEO Bob Chapek was yanked and CEO Bob Iger was brought back in. Since Peltz backed off his proxy fight, Disney stock has fallen another 23%. Peltz's primary contention is that Disney stock is undervalued, and he wants to see the company unlock the value through cost controls and driving profits in streaming, which Disney expects to do within the next year. And he's got a pretty good point here. We're talking about the stock itself hitting like a 15-year low. In that 15 years, they've acquired Lucasfilm. In that 15 years, they acquired Fox. In that 15 years, they actually launched Disney Plus. So they've added all this stuff to it that you would think would only increase the value of the brand, but all the damage that they've done has actually somehow shrunk it. It seems inconceivable, Aaron.
It seems inconceivable that every single one of those things would start losing money as soon as Disney acquired it. Star Wars had that great start because, with Force Awakens box office, because people were, they were kind of starved for Star Wars. It had been a while since there'd been a Star Wars movie in theaters. So people were excited to go back. And, not everybody loved The Force Awakens, but it had a largely positive reaction from a lot of the fan base. And then Rogue One came out, and most people liked Rogue One. And then we got The Last Jedi. And ever since The Last Jedi, it's just been a cascading failure of crap.
It really was that sucker punch. And you're like, whoa, I didn't see that one coming, but my goodness, that hurt. I can't ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really, it gave us all a concussion. And now we're all wobbling around. It really was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And even then, you probably could have kept Star Wars going, but the problem was that you broke the core story. And by breaking the core story, it doesn't matter what you do now before the sequel trilogy. If it leads to the trash sequel trilogy, if it leads to a broken and miserable and unlikable, grumpy Luke Skywalker, then nothing else matters. You can do all kinds of stories around it. Nothing else matters. You broke the core of the franchise.
And it's kind of crazy. They also broke, obviously, Willow, and they decreased the value of Indiana Jones. Don't think we'll ever get one of those movies again, probably. Well, they'll probably try to reboot it eventually, but I don't see how it's going to work. People have lost faith just in Lucasfilm. And you think about the Fox acquisition, really the only good thing to come out of that so far is that Avatar movie, which obviously made a load of money, but that was because it was James Cameron. It wasn't because it was Disney.
And I think most of that money went to Lightstorm. I think Disney just had distribution on that. If correct me in the chat if anybody knows if I'm wrong, but I think they only made the distribution money on that. I don't think that was a big financial success for them. I don't think most of that money came into their coffers.
Well, that would be very disappointing. They kind of need it right now, Aaron.
Yeah, they definitely need it. And now the fact that the sequels have been pushed back, those aren't coming out it's so weird when you look at the Marvel slate or all these plans that they have. And they've all been pushed back, and it's you're going to get Avengers Secret Wars in 2029. And I can't imagine anyone giving a shit by then.
Well, they're trying. Kevin Feige, went out there and put out the convergence world to let people know that Secret Wars will in fact be the big reboot where all the multiverses collide. It's only 6 years beforehand.
Who cares? I'm not excited for it now. Am I going to be more excited for it in 6 years? Probably not.
But yeah, it's just strange. And, like I said, Nelson Peltz has a point. You have Pixar, bulletproof brand, not bulletproof anymore. String of failures. MCU, bulletproof brand, string of failures under Disney. Lucasfilm, bulletproof brand, string of failures under Disney. And you're going, my goodness, they do destroy everything. And even their parks, which was the foundation of all their finances and where their profits come from, even interest in their parks has waned and people aren't showing up as much. And the prices are too high now.
Mm-hmm. And the things that they've acquired that they've worked into the parks are just as bad as the product that they're putting out in the movie theaters with those franchises. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is awful. I mean, the Rise of the Resistance ride is a neat technical achievement, but it's based on the sequel trilogy. Who cares? It's awful. The Millennium Falcon ride is basically you're just playing a video game. It's neat to be in the Falcon. Don't get me wrong. It's neat, and it's really breathtaking when you walk into Galaxy's Edge and the Millennium Falcon is sitting there in real scale. That's fantastic. But once you sever people's emotional connection to Star Wars with your terrible sequel trilogy, it's just less so. I walk in now and I'm like, oh yeah, there's the Falcon. Oh, cool. We're in the Falcon. That's pretty neat. Whereas before it would have been mind blowing. It would have been like a dream come true. But, once you cut the emotional connection that people have to these franchises, they're not viable franchises anymore. And it seems like that's the one thing that Disney is really good at with the things that they acquire. I can't think of a single thing that they've purchased that they have made better. I mean, remember, they bought Power Rangers at one point and did such a terrible job with it that they had to sell it back to Saban.
For an enormous loss.
Yeah, so maybe acquisition is not really your thing. It's good for a momentary bump.
Look what they did to the Muppets.
Burn it out. What are they doing with the Muppets?
How can you screw the Muppets up?
There's a whole generation of kids who have no idea who the Muppets are, and that's, maybe 2-3 generations, and it's depressing. Yeah, the Muppets is like another one of those bulletproof brands. You don't really have to do much other than just provide Muppet content. People are happy. And then if you do a Christmas Carol with throw Muppets in there, they're even more happy. You actually start making a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And, the problem is that these brands are attractive to people who don't care about the brands, but are attracted to the size of them. And then they get in there and they have no vision for it. They have no love for it. We see it in comics too. But it's a vehicle for what they want to do, for their ambitions. And that's why you get the inferior product that you get. You need to go back to finding people who know the properties, who love the properties, who are fans of it, who understand why fans gravitate towards it, and then craft something for those fans. And when you get the core fans on board, they talk to their friends, they talk to their normie friends, and they get them involved. And that's how you build a successful franchise. That's how you maintain it. But everybody just wants to deconstruct everything and tear everything down and make it a vehicle for their own activism or their own, like, how do I tell my story with Indiana Jones? No, how do I tell Indiana Jones through a feminist lens? Just tell an Indiana Jones story through Indiana Jones lens, and you'll probably do a lot better. So over the past 8 months, the entertainment giant has continued to struggle to deliver the promised turnaround. It's still losing money in the streaming division, and profits are quickly disappearing from its linear networks division as cord-cutting proliferates. The company has lacked a big hit at the box office this year, and even its parks division, which has been a ballast in concerns that it raised prices too much. Meanwhile, the Hollywood strikes have put production on hold, and rumors have swirled of a potential asset sale. Although none has yet taken place, the company also said it would invest nearly $60 billion in its park divisions over the next decade, nearly doubling its previous levels of investment. And it just feels like even after the guy said, you know what, it sounds like maybe you're doing something right, they're still doing everything wrong because of the incompetence of Bob Iger. I think he's just lost touch with who their audience is, or perhaps he just doesn't like their audience anymore and wants to go take it another direction, kind of like what DC and Marvel Comics are doing. Well, I think he fell into the same trap that a lot of people do in that bubble. Is, he had presidential ambitions. He wanted to run for the Democrat ticket, and run for president. And so, and he may really believe all of these, I'm going to do all these really progressive things within Disney. But in doing so, he violated kind of like the bond that they have with, half of the families in the country. It was safe entertainment that you could sit your kids down in front of. You didn't have to worry about it. And instead, it became like an activist platform. We always talk about capturing critical nodes and infrastructure. And when people say the culture war, it is a war. They're trying to get a hold of these properties so they can use them as vehicles for their activism. And once the company did that, it's really hard to come back from that. The fact that Disney as a brand is viewed so poorly, it's viewed worse than car companies who didn't tell you that they needed to recall their car and that you could die in. Yes, maybe Ford tried to kill me, but Disney is the worst. That's just a terrible place to be in. It's unfortunate, but it's absolutely true. They've lost touch with the audience. If only there was like a place where people uploaded free critiques of things and free versions of like what they want to see, just a bountiful amount of market research that you could dig into. If only there was like a site where people posted videos like that and you could learn from it. But instead, they stay within the bubble. They thought, from what we're hearing from this new book that's out about the MCU, they were shocked that Ant-Man was a disaster. They thought they had a banger on their hands. They thought that this thing was going to be a big hit. They thought that this was going to be the relaunch and like the return to form of the MCU. And they were surprised when people were like, I don't like this. It had a huge drop off the second week. It had terrible word of mouth. People were not into it. They have no idea why. And it's because you get together in these little cabals. Everybody has the same ideas. Everybody comes from the same place. There's no dissent. There's nobody going, hey, I don't think this is going to work. You don't have that within Disney. It's always like, be positive. Tell me the positive things. Tell me the way that we're doing things right. You know, don't be negative. Sometimes you need some negativity. You need people to give honest critiques of what you're doing, what works and what doesn't. And you need people who are coming in from the outside, who aren't part of your little group, who aren't part of your bubble, who have a different perspective and understand the perspective of your audience. And nobody at Disney seems to understand the audience anymore or care.
It's definitely, it's sad because it feels like we are losing a bedrock, you know, of American tradition or even world tradition at this point. Something that, you know, families basically worldwide just enjoyed because Disney really did understand that family audience, what they were looking for. And maybe this wouldn't be exactly what you wanted, but there would always be something in there that you could enjoy, something that you could relate to. And I think they've just kind of burned it all up. And I don't even know what the point was all along. I guess it's they wanted to be influencers rather than entertainers. I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, and the fact that, it became a company that was serving one man's ambitions, you know, to become president. So that's where I think the turn started to happen. You know, like the culture starts at the top and it started to shift and it can't find its way back now. And I think that's what Nelson Peltz is coming in and trying to do. I think he's saying, like, you know, we need to return to the Disney of old. And that's a huge uphill battle because such damage has been done to people's perception of the brand. It's tough to get that back. You know, and I was obviously somebody who's worked on Disney characters and who loves, you know, loves Disney, loved Star Wars, loved Marvel, loved Pixar. You know, seeing all these brands burn does not bring me any pleasure. But we have to talk about it because talking about it is the only way that there's any chance of anything getting better. You know, the more people that understand what the problems are, the more chance there is that they'll be fixed.
Definitely want to say thank you very much. And this is just the first 20 minutes of the Geek Fix that we do every single week on Wednesday on the Patreon. You know, it's a $10 tier. You get all that. You get all the audio files and so much more. DC solicits, Marvel solicits. We've got an extra comic book review that happens voted on by the Patreon backers every single week. If you haven't checked that one out, definitely go and check out the Patreon. There is a free week's trial on there, and you can see if you want to listen to the rest of this Geek Fix. And I can tell you, Aaron and I go a little bit more off script when we're not making stuff that we believe is going to be on YouTube, and we have a whole lot of fun. And it's like two geeks sitting at the coffee shop talking about geek stuff, or maybe in the comic shop. And I think you guys would like that one. Definitely check that one out. There is a link in the video description to the Patreon as well. Really appreciate you staying by.